Commissioner Hornbuckle, can you turn your camera on so we can reach quorum, please? There we go. Oh. Y'all.
Okay, we have a quorum, so I call this meeting of the Allocations Committee to order at 4:32 p.m. The first item on our agenda is approval of the September 11th Allocations Committee meeting minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review them? And if so, I can entertain a motion at this time.
I move that we accept the minutes as presented.
We have a motion from Commissioner Truzilla. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Commissioner Bodell. All in favor? Actually, pardon me, I forgot to ask. Is there any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? The motion carries unanimously. I am going to move agenda item number 3 up to the top of our agenda because I suspect that item number 1 may actually take some time, and this is an important one for us to discuss. It is my update, and the only thing I have to update is regarding our next meeting, which I feel certain we will, well, it's our regularly scheduled meeting, which is October the 2nd. A commissioner who is not a member of the committee raised the question about whether we wanted to move the meeting because there is a holiday the first week in October. We have asked for everybody to weigh in on whether or not they could attend on October 9th. And we have 2 members of this committee who cannot attend if we move the meeting to October 9th. So we have 2 issues. One is a quorum on whether we have a quorum on October 9th. And the second is this committee's pleasure with respect to moving the meeting. So we can meet either time, but we are going to lose 2 of our regular allocations committee members if we move the meeting. And I will tell you that I am inclined when we have matters as important as COP funding to have the entire committee here when we are making that vote. But I guess I can say by a show of hands, who is in favor of continuing the meeting on October 2nd? Anybody opposed to continuing the meeting on October 2nd? Okay, we will plan on that unless information is shared with us that suggests we need to move it. And if that happens, we're going to look for a date when all or the vast majority of our committee members can be here, because each and every one of us is very important to this work. So, and my apologies to the commissioner who can't participate, but the meeting will be available. The meeting will be available by recording for anybody who is conflicted out because of the holiday. So thank you. All right. The second item on our agenda is the
Chair?
cultural organization program scenario.
Chair?
Yes, I apologize.
Sorry, can somebody move Dr. Jackson from attendee to panelist?
And Dr. Jackson, when that happens, if you have any objection to the October 2nd meeting, please let us know. Do we have her now? Okay, I can't see her. Where is she? Oh, Dr. Jackson, is October the 2nd okay with you for the meeting? You're muted. I'm sorry, we cannot hear you. Can you check your microphone?
Dr. Jackson, I think you're muted. Would you mind trying that one more time on
He's
us?
trying to fix it.
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
I don't know how, first, well, never mind. I will talk about how I end up on, I'm not getting in the right place. But anyways, I moved today's, a client today to accommodate this meeting to next week. So, and then it doesn't, I mean, we'll just adjust. I mean, I'll have to adjust.
Okay, October 2nd is our regular meeting. That's not a specially called meeting. That one.
Well, I know, I understand that. And, but,
Okay, let's talk offline and we'll see what we can do about it. But if that's okay with the.
yes, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, the second item on our agenda is the cultural organization program scenarios. Julia Hosh will be briefing us on this. I'm going to turn the microphone over to her. I'm going to ask that everyone hold their questions until she pauses for questions. And I'm going to ask Julia to go through that briefing as quickly as possible because we are going over and focus on the new material as opposed to the repeated material we covered last week, last meeting. And then we will let everyone have an opportunity to share their thoughts on the different scenarios. Okay.
Hey,
Thank you.
Adriana, would you mind driving the PowerPoint? Get in there. Thank you so much. Okay. As a reminder, here's where we are timeline wise. We are going to vote next month. We'll then go to quality of life and then city council through October. So whether this meeting is the 2nd, 9th, or somewhere in between, we're not late. We're going to be right on time. And here are those dates. So again, there is no penalty to the organizations or delay to the contract timeline. Even if we don't go to council until November 12th, we will still be just fine. Okay. 68 out of our 70 applicants went to panel. We also had some organizations that submitted LOIs but did not go to panel. And there were a lot of new organizations, more than we've had in quite some time. This is review, so we're going to move through it pretty quickly. Last meeting, I know not everybody could be with us, so I wanted to take just a second to recap what we talked about. We discussed why the scoring rubric has fewer points than usual this year. So this year, rather than being out of 100 points, it's out of 90 points. And the reason for that is because we had to take out the way that we scored board and staff diversity, and we did not replace those points. The other piece that was different was the access and impact panel scores. The information that we asked panelists to grade at that time is now federally incompliant. So we have replaced those 20 points with a survey that is federally compliant that went out to every organization. The survey results were within 5 points of every organization except 12. Those dozen organizations may have interpreted questions in a way that was overly specific that ended up penalizing them. So their panel score was over 5 points higher. I'm sorry, this is a typo, than their survey score. For the exact surveys questions, if you are curious, they're in the back of this deck and they were in last week's packet. So over the past week, I've been calling those dozen organizations to clarify those questions, which is why some organizations have COP scores that look different than last week. There's nothing that was done differently. It was just that when I got on the phone with those organizations and walked through some of the questions that they had answered no, several of them actually gave me information that actually they should have marked themselves as yes on that. We had a couple organizations that that there were questions that were written away that were overly confusing to people, and explaining those and talking through the programs that they had helped us interpret those in a way that we could award those points back. Okay. Here's what we're looking at. The panel score, we could keep all the public benefit points for 35. We could keep all the organizational capacity points for 15. We could keep contract compliance and financial viability, program management. We took out the diversity scores, like I told you, and we swapped the access and impact survey for a new survey for 20 points for a total of 90. The upside of this is that these changes allowed us to consider original applications without having to go back to applicants and ask for more paperwork in a challenging year. That was something we didn't want to do, was overburden applicants who did everything right the first time that we asked of them. The challenge of this is that as much as we tried on this survey, and I'll talk through it in a second, it still was challenging to be understood. And the difference of a few points changed where people fell in their rankings with their peers, sometimes significantly. So ups and downs to this year in the way that it was scored. This is this slide is a review from last week, and then my notes from this week are in red. So again, there's no perfect solution to replacing the original panel scores. Those are made by real panelists and their own perspectives, and those just can't be replicated. But this was as close as we could possibly do. After those phone calls, the average difference between the panel score and this survey was about 1 point, which that's the best I could do. And it has a much lower range in the difference for people that were farther away between their panel and their survey. After the phone calls, we got a little closer. 75 points, so the vast majority of organizations received a score within 3 points of their original panel score. And that allows us to move forward while considering access and impact as much as we possibly can. These applicants that I just talked about, these are the ones that I'm completing calls with. Most calls have been finished. There are a couple of organizations that I'm still catching this week. Just there's been a very short time between last meeting and this meeting, and North Texas Giving Day happened in the middle. So some CEOs are a little hard to reach right now, but we're doing it. And it still felt that we were close enough to go ahead and send you the draft on Tuesday night so you had time to read it. It really didn't change the monetary awards of too many people. Again, it just mostly changed the rank of a few. Okay, here's what we did last month. I showed you one scenario. We prioritized new organizations, bringing it at a base rate close to the rest of their peer, and then raising minimum funding percentages in each tier to organizations that got at least a 90. So we invited in all new orgs that got at least a 90. Here's the list of folks. We're considering new orgs, including those returning after a gap or returning in a different way, like the DSO as the whole DSO rather than just the children's chorus. We also awarded additional hot dollars to other organizations that scored a 90, but by when they came into the program or how much funding we had at that time, are funded less by revenue percentage below their peers. This was the same strategy that we used in our final scenario last year, and the budget was pending. So with your notes, last month we talked about some folks really expressed an interest in bringing in as many new orgs as possible and basing that on scores and revenue. So with your notes, we went ahead and made 2 scenarios for us to talk about today. There are some changes that have been made across the board in all scenarios. Anita Martinez was cut $10,000. They used to be awarded 50. We're suggesting awarding 40. And that is because they were significantly funded as a higher percentage of revenue as opposed to anybody else in their tier. And they received one of the lowest scores. And so that was one organization that was brought to staff's attention last week. The other organization is Big Thought because they are reducing their scope significantly of work this year, and they also were funded a higher percentage by revenue than anybody else in their tier. In the last scenario, I had put by percentage of revenue where it fell. Dallas Black Dance Theater was marked as 200,000. In reviewing that last week, saw that they left in 2025 at 250. So added back 25K to that organization for discussion to get them closer to where they left while still being in line with the rest of the peers in their tier. So those are across the board in both scenarios. They're open to discussion for you, but they're the same either way. Okay, this is the purple one. This is, I try and usually make the colors kind of close if they're the scenarios that are kind of close. Purple is the blue one bumped up a little bit. So this is last month, sort of with some tweaks based on your suggestions. So this is the same new organizations. They're all that we had last month. But our budget got finalized. You can see it on the top of your sheet. And what this does is I was able to award more funding per organization for most organizations. So, which helps us to get funding closer to even among peers in the same tier. So I did two things. One is increased the entry point for new organizations in every tier. So for tier one, that entry point is at 18% of revenue. For tier two, it's 12% of revenue. For tier three, it is 8. Tier 4 is 3.5. Tier 5 is 2, and tier 6 is 1. I also was able to say that if you were not new, if you were returning, and you were not being awarded that same percent of revenue as if you would have started this year. So if you had been a new organization and got the same score you did, but I was able to bump you up to that same sort of minimum of revenue. The other thing that I did is make sure that there is a minimum possible actual number for each tier rather than just a percentage. So for tier 1, that minimum number is 26. Tier 2, that minimum number is 35. Tier 3 is 50. 4 is 80. 5 is 100. And 6 is 125. And so hopefully over time, that will help us shore this up a little bit so there's less of a difference between peer organizations depending on when they entered the program. Okay. The other scenario takes into consideration the fact that this year is a serious anomaly in the funding landscape of not just Dallas, but the country. And there are a lot of funders that are no longer available to all arts organizations, and especially some of what the organizations that are part of this program. So in honor of the philosophy of getting as many in the door as could reasonably enter the program, and what I mean by reasonable is you got a score that was in fact better than organizations that are returning. I don't mean you got a 70 and like barely got in. I mean you got an 85 or so and you beat out some organizations that are returning. So as many could reasonably enter the program at a base rate close to the rest of the tier. It also does the same thing of raising minimum funding percentages to returning orgs that received at least a 90. So again, if you were returning, you would still get the same minimum entry percentage. This allows us to add 3 more organizations: Young Leaders Strong City, Spark, and KNON Agape Broadcasting. I do want to point out that the reason it's all 3 and not just 2 is because KNON was one of the ones that I had to call on the phone. And after that phone call, they actually are smack in line with the other 2. So they're like within 1 point of the other 2. This awards the same thing, the additional hot dollars to other organizations that scored above a 90 but are funded less than revenue percentage below their peers. So the same thing is still happening, but to accommodate more funds needed for new organizations, there are fewer increases for current organizations and by tier. So if you look at like tier 5 and 6, instead of having 100 minimum in 5 and 125 minimum in tier 6, it's 100 and 100. So we get that funding back a little bit by awarding fewer big increases for larger organizations that have been more behind. The upside of this one is that we are still remaining responsive to our ecosystem and that we are still able to, it's not that nobody returning is not getting bumps. They are. It's just not the same extent as the other one. And we're still going with the philosophy of there's a minimum entry point at each one. It's just not as high as the other one. So it will take us longer to get, if we keep going this route in future years, it'll take us longer to be fully sustainable in it. That said, it does let in it does sort of understand that this year being an anomaly, there are more people, and I think that was reflected in the number of new applicants we got. There are more folks requesting city funding. The other thing that I do want to highlight for both of these scenarios is that this committee chose to change the guidelines for Arts Activate this year, that if you get more than 100K from COP, you cannot apply to Arts Activate. And so there are a couple of organizations that, because of these bumps, will no longer be able to apply for that, which I would argue is a good thing, but just something to be mentally thinking about when you're looking at these awards. Okay.
First hand up is Commissioner Lomo. I'd like to first see if ask for questions of Julia just to clarify, and then I would like to go around and let everyone have an opportunity to say what they're thinking about these scenarios. So Commissioner Lomo, is it a question, or were you ready to talk about what you, because you can be first if there are no questions. Did
I
everybody?
actually have questions about
Okay.
some of this.
Okay, great. Shoot, you have the
Okay.
floor.
The first question, thank you, Julia. And mind you, I printed out yesterday's color backup. So,
Yep.
but my questions are really from the slides. So slide 12.
Okay.
Well, actually, it's really for the Excel spreadsheets, but
Okay.
the projected budget, that is the city's projected budget, correct?
Yes, that is the project. That is, and actually, that's a great question. I'm going to take the question that you asked and extrapolate it a little bit because I didn't mention that at all. The budget of 6.7 million in that top green box in both scenarios is the funding that we were allowed to spend last year, which is what we are allowed to spend this year. We may go over that to the extent that the orange scenario allows us, which is 350 over. We may not go much more than that. I have
Okay.
spent every single dollar that was allowed by budget, but that is, we can do that because of HOT. We can do that because of HOT. It's not taking away from other funding programs.
So that 6.7 is inclusive of HOT.
No, that is 6.7 of general fund.
Gotcha. So then the difference between the 6.7 and the 7.02 or the 7.09 is the HOT.
Yes.
Perfect.
The
Okay,
green box. So like if we're looking at the orange scenario, the green box at the top, the 6.7 million, that is what we're supposed to spend.
awesome.
The negative 350 is the overage that we are allowed to spend because of HOT.
Perfect. That clarifies a lot. And then Chair, let me know if this question can be answered now or if we want to wait until we get into the scenarios. But my next questions really come up to the young leaders, the Spark, the Agape, the three new groups that are or could be added in the orange scenario, and getting an understanding of what arts program they are going to offer, because I'm having a hard time seeing what that could be when you put it up against Orchestra of New Spain or Avant Chamber Dance. So let me know, Chair.
No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah, I am happy to. And actually what I did last year, I'm happy to do this again. I apologize. I have not. I am happy to send you the proposed scope of work for all of the new organizations so that you can read it. There's one question in the application that basically says, what would your scope of work be for the year? Young Leaders, Strong City. These three actually are interesting because you're right. They received slightly lower panel scores because the panel also had that question comparing, to more traditional arts organizations. All three of them had that same sort of experience. KNON, however, runs a series of stations that go all year, but well, it's one station, but radio programs that are open to the public go all year. They have a Young DJs program. They have a camp. Then they also have several. They have a blues festival and a jazz festival here in Dallas that are in fact live into the public. Spark is an They run several arts camps. They run creativity like after school. They have different day things as well as their facility that runs year round. Young Leaders Strong City is sort of in the same similar vein that they have arts programs that weave in with activism and social justice. They also have several like young leaders summits. And so they too present, all three of these do in fact present a year of services, even if they're not the traditional artistic season in the same way that we have a lot of others. And we do have a precedent of other organizations in the program not presenting a traditional season either. For example, Arts Mission Oak Cliff and the Salmon Center, their primary thing is providing a facility, and they also have programming on top of that. So all three of these offer sort of traditional season and in a way that several of our other organizations do as well. So it's not unprecedented. It does take more convincing of the panel as well.
Thank you. And then Chair, did you want me to weigh in on which scenario, or do you want to wait?
No, I think that's fine,
Okay.
unless anybody else needs any clarification questions, because I want everyone to be able to, and Commissioner Holm, you can weigh in on one or the other, or you can discuss what you like about each one and anything different you would like to see. We want to be sure that we get something good that we can vote on next time. So if you have a preference for orange or purple, but you have some questions about the one you have a preference for or some adjustments you'd like to see, you can go on and address that. I'd like to go around the room once before we start doing second, so that everyone can have the benefit of the thought process of all of the committee members, if that makes any sense. But try to
Sure.
do it
So-
quickly enough that we have time
Yep.
for everyone.
My,
You first, and then Commissioner Hornbuckle, you will be after Commissioner Haloma.
my preference is for purple, and only because, you know, when other arts groups are getting federal funding, like National Endowment for the Arts cut, I feel that a fewer increase, as stated on slide 12 in the orange scenario, for current organizations, I think that might hurt them. And plus, I'm not really convinced that these three new groups are offering, I feel like they're asking the city to pay for things that they're currently doing. And they're not really arts focused. And even though, yes, we have set precedents, I'm on the record about that. I really do prefer purple this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Halomo. Commissioner Hornbuckle.
Madam Chair, could I go last? I'm
Yes,
still
I'm sorry.
working through
I saw your hand up, so
it.
that's
And
why
that
I
was my
called on.
request. I just wanted to go last. I just
Yes, you may go. You may go last. Who would
Thank you.
like to speak next? Don't make me call on you like teachers. Okay, Commissioner
Well-
Daniel, and then Commissioner Bodell. Commissioner Daniel first. We cannot hear you.
You look very wise with your hand in the plant.
Can't hear you.
Not yet. Why don't we skip to the next? We'll come back.
We are going to skip to Commissioner Bodell while you fix while we see if you can get your sound on. Commissioner Bodell.
Okay, yes. Thank you, Julia. This was great. I am new to this process, and so I did dig into everything, the spreadsheet after last week, and I sent Julia a very lengthy email, and I found myself looking at a lot of the organizations that we've been funding just because we've always funded. Their scores were low. I had a lot of head scratching moments, and Julia did a great job of answering those, and I didn't know she had done all of this redoing and phone calling and reevaluating. So I do really appreciate your thoughtfulness and your research on this. It seemed like last time in our last meeting, everyone was all about access and increasing access to more people and more groups. So, and I agree with that. And if you really looked and evaluated the scores of the existing people that have been doing it and we're funding just because we've always funded it, I lean against that, honestly. And I'm looking at the orange scenario, and that feels like what everyone talked about last week, last time, increasing access to 3 more organizations. I don't see that you would have to give a lot of money to those, but having access and that encouragement that the city is behind them, and they are arts focused. All 3 of them are arts focused. That's what they do 24/7. So um, I vote for orange. So that's where I'm leaning.
Thank you, Commissioner Bodell. Commissioner Daniel, is your sound working?
I think so, maybe. Yes, maybe.
Okay, we'll hear from you, and then we'll hear from Commissioner Jackson.
Okay, great. I am a fan of the orange scenario. I think that, as Commissioner Bodell said, we are talking about expanding the access that people have to the arts. And I think that if we're saying that we're committed to expanding the access to the arts, we need to make sure that we're extending the arts through the places where people are going to get access to them. I don't think that we should start gatekeeping what is and isn't an artistic expression because it doesn't fit within the model of what has historically been the way that we express the arts. I specifically know that, like with Spark, they do have active artistic programming. And so I think getting an opportunity to expand what it means to engage through and with the arts is important. And if we can get as much access to the arts as possible, great. I think, again, it goes back to messaging. I think it goes back to communicating to the legacy and established organizations that there are increases that are happening, but we, in addition to increasing the revenue that these organizations are getting, we also want to increase the pool on the pie so that everybody has access to more. I think that going with purple, while it represents us standing strong with what we've historically done, I think orange means that we are continuing to move forward with the times and not being mired in the way that arts have historically been displayed to the communities that we serve.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson.
Good afternoon or evening, everybody. I want to say that I support and really I'm in favor of orange for the same reasons that Commissioner Bodell and Damani have expressed. I think that it gives us an opportunity to add in, it's easy to be comfortable with the organizations that we know have traditionally been funded, and we can feel confident in their ability to provide services. But I think it's also important to give new organizations and broaden the scope. And if we have the, financial bandwidth to do that, I don't see a reason we shouldn't.
Thank you, Commissioner Jackson. I think that we have 2 commissioners left. So in light of Commissioner Hornbuckle's request, Commissioner Truzella.
Okay, so first of all, Julia, thank you. You've done a mammoth job. With that said, I don't like either one of them. If I had to go with any of them, I'm leaning a little bit more towards the orange. But I think we have some big questions to ask ourselves. One, should we fund organizations that score under 80%? That's one. And it's a hard question because none of them are new. Some of them are legacy. 2, admin scores. There is really no reason, now that we have taken out board requirements, why we're not seeing higher admin scores. 3, are we looking at the dollar amount or are we looking at the percentage amount when we're looking at the top scores and the bottom scores? Because I'm having a hard time justifying some of these. I will just use Anita Martinez for an example, just because they're on page 1. The lowest scoring organization, yet one of the highest funder percentage wise. If you look at that, and the 3rd highest or 4th highest, even with the decrease, 4th highest dollar wise. So that's a question I think we do need to look at. I think legacy is important for for a lot of these organizations, but it should not be assumed that just because you have always gotten money from the city, you will get the same amount of money this year. Just because you're a legacy. What I have witnessed in my, is it 7 or 8 years on the commission, is that we know organizations fall into the same bucket, it seems, every year with their scores. But yet we continue to fund them just as we have in the past, and they continue to score the same ways. There's little or no improvement, with the exception of a few. Another one that I have an issue with is if you go to tier 5 and you take a look at just the same budget, hold on, no, excuse me, tier 6. You take a look at Big Thought and Dallas Theater Center. Their scores are almost exactly the same. Well, they are exactly the same. And yet one is getting 5.8% of their budget and the other is getting 1%. The one that is getting 5.8% scored the lowest. And they're receiving the majority, 5.8, which is the highest percentage of revenue out of all of the ones in the category. So I think we have, I hate to say this, Julia, but I still think we should maybe think about creating another option. Thank you.
Yes. Go ahead.
Commissioner Truzilla, thank you so much for that. I was writing down your points and I missed the second one. I have, should we score below 80s? Those are legacy organizations. And then I have, are we focused on dollar amount versus percentage of revenue? What was your second point?
The second point was just the admin scores.
Okay, thank you.
Those that continue to, that score low in admin, we can take the last 5 years and they've scored low in admin the last 5 years.
And then my second follow-up question for you is, are you, if I were, so there will be, and I'll break the mystery for everybody on the committee. The hope is that today, after some conversation, you folks will lead me one way or the other. And so then next week when we vote, I will be able to hand you one scenario with all of your suggestions, incorporate all of the things so that we have one, like, vote on this or not. And then maybe there's a couple orgs we make line changes to. So Commissioner Truzilla, what would make you happier to vote on that if neither of these scenarios are like quite getting it? Is it we reevaluate those organizations that get below an 80 and look more closely at their funding and specifically cuts? Is it like what would make you more confident in voting for that?
So I think we need to, thank you. I think we need to decide, are we looking at the dollar amount or are we looking at the percentage amount? It's percentage of revenue. And I thought that from the discussions the past couple of years, we were really going to move forward at looking at the percentage of revenue. Because that in each tier, which was one of the main reasons why we moved to these tiers. So if we're looking at the percentage of revenue, you know, taking a look at tier 6 with Dallas Theater Center and Big Thought, it is not to say that somebody could say, why do we even have a panel? Why do we even have an admin score when we're just funded the same way we're being funded year after year after year, and we're still at 1% of our budget, where somebody that scored the exact same amount as I did gets 5.8%. How do you justify that? To me, that's not equitable. And so what would make me really happy is if we had a reason why we were funding the way we were, not just that it's because they're historically funded this way, versus, okay, this makes sense. Insofar as we'll go, sorry, I'm making you flip back and forth. If you go back to tier 1, this makes sense that the Women's Chorus of Dallas, who scored 100%, they get a majority of the percentage of revenue, and it moves down from there. That makes sense to me. I know it's not going to be, you can't do apples to apples, especially when you get to tier 6. There's no way you can. But at least there's some justification, because right now, if Dallas Theater Center were to come to us and say, well, why did we get 1% and Big Thought got 5.6 when our budgets are the same and our scores were the same? I got nothing. There's no way I can defend that.
Thanks. Commissioner Hornbuckle.
I like the purple scenario. I would like the committee to please understand that I haven't spent a lot of time looking at the scenarios, so I am very much listening to everyone's comment. I'm not, that's not a hard position. I am very much listening to everyone's comment. So I'll just stop right there.
Thank you. Okay, if you all will indulge me, I usually find that we have headed one direction or the other, so I usually don't give you my comments, but I am going to today. I lean towards the purple scenario, but I am conflicted over it. I agree with the concept, and by and large, this committee has always agreed with the concept with bringing in new organizations. So I agree with Commissioner Holomo, but for some slightly different reasons. I do see those 3 organizations as being arts organizations. They are organizations that I think we should fund at some point. So it would be easier for me if those were 3 organizations that I didn't think that we need in the arts ecosystem. I'm not exactly sure where I fall, but a couple of points I want to make and maybe throw out for discussion. In either scenario, we are funding new organizations. In the purple scenario, we're funding 8 out of 14, which is 57% of the new organizations that completed the application. So it can't be said that we are not expanding the scope. In the orange scenario, we're funding 11 out of 14, so we're leaving out 3, and we're funding 79%. I agree wholeheartedly with the point that Commissioner Holomo made, that we must also think, when we look at the orange scenario, we are thinking about the impact of what this year is like for all of these new organizations. We're thinking about the fact that they don't have other places to look to for funding. But that situation applies equally to the other 50-something organizations that we already fund. They are also losing funding. And I agree with Commissioner Truzillo's comments, even though she is leaning towards the orange scenario. And this is why I'm having a hard time choosing between which one I'm going to say purple for now, but with my heart heavy over not funding these 3 organizations at all. I realize I'm rambling a little bit, but I'm not as organized as I want to be. I've had kind of a crazy week. So some of the things that are bothering me, if we look at, I think a really good example is tier 1. If you look at tier 1, the rule recommendation is to bring everyone in at 18%. And the problem I have with that is Swan Strings, which is the new organization, which you should have on your corrected thing, is being brought in at 18% because there was a change in their revenue. But if you look a couple of lines up, Arts Mission Oak Cliff is only at 13%. And if you guys will recall, Arts Mission Oak Cliff was a brand new organization 2 years ago that scored at 100%. And that year we were bringing them in at 13%. That was the best we could do. I don't know where I'm going with this, except to say that bothers me, right? If you continue down the tiers, like tier 2, if we bring everybody in at 12%, that's okay on the purple scenario because there's no organization being brought in at less than 12%. But if you look at the orange scenario, you're bringing in 3 or 4 organizations, you're bringing the new organizations in 1 or 2% higher than 3 or 4 organizations. If you look at tier 3 and we bring them in at 8%, that's okay because everybody is being brought in at, nobody's being brought in higher than existing organizations. I hope I'm making my point. I hope you can see that I feel like that is troubling to me, that it's just sort of the lottery, that this is the year we're going to bring everybody in. The new organizations are going to get brought in at a percentage when relatively new organizations were not afforded that situation. And I do feel like I know the purple scenario, both scenarios give some organizations a bump. I'm just not certain that there's not a compromise. I know that we are reluctant to bring new organizations in below the minimum percentage because then we continue to have this same historical problem that we have. But it seems like to me that it's something that we should consider as a compromise so that we can also make more progress on evening up the tiers. I don't have a good answer. But I think that all of those are head scratchers and things that are hurting my head. It is also hurting my head to continue to fund an organization that scores 78.7 at $50,000 and an organization that scores, we have another one. We have Dallas Historical Society scoring 77.1%. In the case of Dallas Historical Society, they are at least being funded at the lowest percentage in their tier, where Anita Martinez, if we cut them 10,000, is still being funded at 20%. So all of those things cause me some headache. I lean slightly towards the purple, and that currently puts us at like four commissioners for orange and 3 for purple. I would like, before we go around again, and I see your hand, Commissioner Holomo, you will be first. We do have some commissioners who are not members of the committee, but that does not prevent them from speaking. And we have a lot to talk about, so I don't want to expand this too much, but I would like to ask if anybody has anything that they would like to add for the committee's consideration. And I think that would be our chair, Commissioner Small, and Commissioner Nugent are the only 2 that I see on camera. Would either of you like to add anything for our consideration before we go around again? Commissioner Nugent?
Yes, I don't think we ought to fund organizations that get under 80%. So I'm zeroing out Anita Martinez. Yeah, but
It's also Dallas Historical Society. I will say we do address that in the guidelines, and we say that you cannot be funded if you score below 70. So we do have a benchmark, but that doesn't prevent us from either not funding below 80 but we haven't given them any notice of that. The guidelines do say you have to go below 70. So just to keep that in terms of completely zeroing out an organization. Commissioner Small and then Commissioner Holomo.
I see that Julia has a comment that
Yes,
she
and I'm
wants to make as well, but in fact, I have a question. I have a question for Julia. I think I clarified it with Glenn. I just wanted to, first of all, thank all of you guys. I mean, you're doing incredible. Julia, I mean, wow, it's just amazing. But is the Agape Broadcasting, is that KNON? Okay. So in terms of the orange scenario, I certainly, I don't have a vote on it, but I understand your thinking on the orange scenario. I understand Commissioner Holomo's question and wanting to make sure that we vet all of the newcomers. But if we have an opportunity to support radio station KNON, and I'm speaking not only as a commissioner, but somebody who's been involved in the arts community, especially in the business of music here in the city of Dallas for over 40 years. KNON is a leader in supporting music, independent artists here in Dallas. I didn't know that we'd never really supported them. If we have an opportunity to support the leader of independent music, there are many artists that have come from the city that never would have gotten a start without KNON. And I mean in every genre. I mean from blues to they do, I mean, all sorts of ethnic music. what we would consider traditional country music or rock, pop, R&B. A lot of these artists have really gotten their start in KNON. So with that being the case and looking at the dollar amount, it's not a whole lot of money, but the fact that we have an opportunity to support them, I would certainly ask that we consider that as we look at the opportunities here in this budget.
Thank you, Commissioner Small. Commissioner Holm, do you want to comment before?
Can I actually correct just a couple of things that I've heard as a group, and I want to make sure we're in the same place before we go around again. So I've heard several commissioners. Thank you so much for your attention to the. Are we doing revenue or are we doing dollar amounts? And then I think that was some of our chair's questions as well. So there are a couple of folks whose scores jumped this week, so I might have missed one or two, and Arts Mission Oak Cliff is one of the ones I missed. I will go back and review it this week. So what is happening in both scenarios is the new organizations get brought in at a specific revenue that I've put the number. If they got above a whatever. In the orange, it's 84, 85. For the purple, it's a 90. Then for every returning organization that got at least a 90, you get at least the same revenue as somebody who would have been coming in this year. So for example, Arts Mission Oak Cliff, the reason they are marked at 13%, even though they have a 90 right now, is because their score jumped and I didn't catch it. They're one of the ones that I got on the phone with. So in this particular example that Commissioner Ragaloni rightly brought up, their score would not be at 13. It would be at whatever 18% of 227,000 is. I will do that math before the next time we meet. There's a second number there. It says in tier 1, it's 26K is the lowest possible. What that means is we are not awarding anybody less than 26K if they scored above a 90. So there's one of those numbers for every tier. So even if you're 8% revenue or something would not have gotten up to 26, we bump it to 26 because below that is too low. Now you don't get that bump if you didn't get your 90 in either scenario, but it gets us so that we are a little closer to sustainable. The difference between the two scenarios is those minimums are higher in the purple, like by the number, especially in the higher tiers, and the revenue percentages are higher in the purple. But the philosophy is the same, that returning organizations don't get as much of the short end of the stick in either scenario as I fear may be coming across because of a couple of organizations I missed when their scores changed. If returning organizations got at least a 90, they are guaranteed the same minimum as new organizations coming in, at least that. So I do want to make that. The other clarification I do want to make is that the guidelines state that we can fund new organizations that get at least an 80. And the guidelines state that we can fund organizations that get returning organizations that get at least a 70. Below a 70, the maximum you can get is 60% of the award. So we don't have to kick you out, but we have to cut your funding by at least 40% if you get below a 70, which did not apply to anybody this year, but that is what our guidelines state. Now, historically, we have funded only 90 and up for new organizations, and we have expected returning organizations to get at least an 80. So we can discuss making those cuts to those two organizations that have been brought up that got well below their 80. Those are just the clarifications I want to make before we do a second round. The other thing that would be really helpful to me as I'm trying to take your comments and make them into a gorgeous third scenario that everybody loves, is that first slide that we had the conversation about the things that are the same in both scenarios. There are some assumptions that I am making that if you do not agree with those assumptions, if we could clarify that today, that would be helpful so that they don't show up next week and you don't love them.
Well, remind me so that we go back to that slide after we finish this round of conversations. So Commissioner Holomo, if I could just ask Julia a couple of questions before you jump, but that you just, I get what you're saying about that those are just mathematical mistakes, but is that true in the orange as well?
So you got.
So you're
new
saying that,
organizations come in at 11.
oh, they're at 11, not at 12, because
Right.
it's at 12 here.
Right, that's right.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Okay, Commissioner Holomo.
Thank you. So just a clarification. I only got 3 of our committee members in favor of orange and 3 in purple. Who was the 4th in favor of the orange?
Orange was Bodell, Daniel, Jackson, Trizilla, kind of. Purple was Holomo, Hornbuckle, and Bragaloni.
Okay,
Commissioner
perfect. That
Trizillo and I are kind of squarely in the middle, which doesn't help anything at all.
Gotcha.
With her leaning orange and me leaning purple.
So just for clarification, right? I'm not opposed to new organizations taking advantage of the grants programs. A while ago, I had asked exactly what Dallas Opera or Dallas Symphony or whoever was in the COP program was offering in terms of services. And it was kind of addressed. And so that's why I'm looking at these 3 specific, right? If there were 3 other new organizations that had never benefited from COP or even an Arts Activate grant, I would ask the same question. What services are they providing to the residents of Dallas? Because I know these organizations, I have a lot of respect for them. I think the world of them, et cetera. But in terms of precedence, we've used that word several times this conversation. We don't always have to fund to the maximum everything, right? Arts Activate, Culture of Value. I think during this round or during this year, I think organizations and artists would understand that we're trying to fund as many with as little as we have, and that something is better than nothing. I've said this for several years now, but I just don't want anybody to walk away thinking that I'm anti-growing the pot of new people, because I'm clearly all for it. I just need to be it just has to be very clear as to what services are being offered in return to the residents. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Holomo. Commissioner Hornbuckle, I think you had your hand up, and then Commissioner Trizilla.
Yes, I heard comments that that may lead us down the road where we won't fund particular organizations. I hope we don't do that. I think that's this is a terrible time to want to not fund an organization. So I hope that's not the way we're going with this discussion. But I'm listening to everybody's comments.
Commissioner Trizilla.
Okay, so I'm hoping this won't be as rambling as my first one. But so we have 2 new organizations that are actually returning organizations, but because they skipped a year, they're considered new. So we have, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have funded the
3.
Women's Chorus of Dallas before, correct?
Yes, Women's Chorus of Dallas is coming back with a 2-year gap. Dallas Black Dance Theater is coming back with a 1-year gap, and Dallas Symphony Orchestra is coming back as their full selves after a 6-year gap where they were just the Children's Chorus of Greater Dallas and the Dallas Symphony Children's Chorus.
Okay, so where I get into an issue is when you're a new organization, you come in at a certain amount, and which is a lower amount. It's really hard to grow from that amount for the next couple years because we continue to fund the way we have funded over and over and over. If you got, $25,000 for the past 4 years, we're going to try really hard to make sure you get $25,000 this year, regardless of your score. We're going to try really hard. And that's where we get into this crutch, is instead of funding the organizations for doing great work and getting great scores, because at some point that's why we have the scoring panel, we've got to be able to say, okay, the top 10 funder, the top scores are reflected in our funding. And when I take a look at, when you go to Dallas Black Dance Theater, looking at the percentage of revenue, they're up there pretty high and they're a new organization. I'm looking, yeah. They're getting 4.6% and they're a new organization when we're saying here new organizations in at least 2%. And we've got return, it's hard to justify when you look at the other new organizations. Why are we giving them such special treatment when we've got Spark or Young Leaders, Strong City coming in at just the bare minimum? I don't know if any of that made any sense whatsoever.
I got it. I'm taking
And,
notes.
and I do think if I can take a shot at this, and if I'm not stating what you've said, Commissioner Truzzello, actually that particular funding isn't consistent with the rule that's stated if that organization is treated as a new organization, because the rule is new in at 2%, or is it new in at least 2%?
At least.
Okay, so then I would articulate the question this way: how does the committee feel about what are the criteria for why we fund at more than the at least if the rule's been applied at the minimum for everybody else? That would be one of the questions I would have
Yes,
for you.
thank you.
I don't have a strong feeling about that particular example, but just and of course that particular example, these organizations that are returning but have been out of the program are a slightly different animal from, or are they? I think that's one of the issues that we have here is how do we measure the balance between looking at existing organizations who are not receiving a similar percentage to others in their tier? What's more important, that or expanding the arts program to new organizations, or bringing back organizations who have, for whatever reason, had to take a break from funding? And I think that it is probably a fair statement from listening to this committee that everyone on this committee thinks that both of those things are important. And if we had enough money, we would be doing both of them. All of this could be easily fixed if we could get a check that would be big enough to fix those percentages. But right now, we're in the unenviable position of choosing. I want to follow Commissioner Halomo's comments by saying, I'm absolutely not against bringing in new organizations. I want to bring in as many as we can. The real question for me is it enough to bring in 8 so that we can also give some extra money to our existing organizations that are out of whack percentage wise, or should the priority be to bring in more organizations? To see if we can kind of get off center, I want to ask, just maybe for a show of hands, and the things I'm going to ask, I will warn you, Julia, you're not going to like. So, but we got to find out. The orange scenario, which would bring in all new organizations that score 85 and above, proposes bringing them in at 8% so that we don't have this continued problem with the percentages. So it fixes it for the new organizations, but it spends some of the money that we could otherwise use to fix those discrepancies between existing organizations that are already being funded. I don't know if we want to do a show of hands, or if you want to go around and say, I don't think we should bring them in unless we can bring them in at the 8%, or I would like to see a scenario where we don't bring them in at the full 8% and we use that money to solve some of the discrepancies. What are your thoughts on that? And I don't have a thought one way or another. I'm trying to think of how we get to a yes for everything. Commissioner Daniel.
So can you say that one more time? Sorry, my brain was scrambling.
Yeah. Okay. So, sort of it seems like the tipping point for us all is, what's the priority? Bring in 3 more organizations, or use that money to bump up some of our existing organizations who are out of whack on their percentage of revenue? Everybody understand that's a fair characterization of the difference between the two? So one option is Does it have to be just that? Or could we bring in these three new organizations, but not at 8%, at a smaller amount, and have more money to give to these other organizations? If we do that, the thing that's bad about doing that is what Julia did for us is what we've asked her to. We've asked her, when we bring new organizations in, to try to bring them in at a certain minimum at the tier, in that tier, so that we don't continue to have this problem with them being all over the board. And I'll give you a good example of how that's happened. Everybody look at tier 3. So in either organization, the proposal is to bring them in at least 2%. And yet there are 3 organizations that under either tier will be funded at less than 2%. Not a lot, 1.7, 0.8, and 1.1. And interestingly, all 3 of those organizations are relatively new to our program. So that's a perfect
Chair,
example.
which tier are you talking about?
I'm sorry, tier 5. Sorry,
Okay,
tier 5.
okay.
So
Orange or purple?
Either
Sorry.
one, doesn't matter. It's the same on both of them. It might be off a little bit, but the principle's the same. So if you look at them, Julia has proposed for that tier that we bring everybody in at 2% or more. And we only have one organization that would be coming in at actually more. But we would have 3 organizations who wouldn't actually meet the new rule, right? And so, and interestingly, those 3 organizations are organizations that have been added to our programming in the last 3 years. So this is a tier that shows the problem with bringing in the new organizations at less than 8% is the point that I'm trying to make. So I'm throwing it out there to say we can capture some more money by funding some of these organizations at a smaller amount, but if we do, we're going to exacerbate that problem that we've been trying to get rid of. And that's a perfect example of how that happens. So I don't know if that makes any sense. I feel like at some point, I'm going to go around one more time for anybody that wants to say something. And then I feel like perhaps it would be helpful to see if we can lean one way or the other and then ask for some adjustments to purple or orange. And currently we have more people on orange than purple, to try to address the concerns of those people who are in favor of purple. But before we do that, does anybody want to speak?
I would love to, I'm going to jump in. I would love to see where all the organizations are treated exactly the same.
Wish we had that much money.
And that means some of our returning organizations are going to get a whole lot less than what they've gotten. Instead of funding the best of the best, we're funding, okay, well, you've been around for 20 years, so we're going to keep you at that. Your point is well taken in tier 5. If we're going to fund every new organizations at 2%, it would behoove Forest Forward and Sixth Floor Museum and Dallas Holocaust to take a year off and come back, because they would at least be funded at 2%.
Well, we change the rules every year. I don't
Yeah.
mean change the rules. I mean the formula.
Yeah.
But which is kind of my point. Commissioner Daniel?
So yeah, math is not my favorite part of being a commissioner for sure. I think that if like I like orange, still like orange, and the biggest thing for me is like how do we continue to bring folks on, right? So I'm open to a scenario where maybe they get less. I think that we are in a unique situation, right? I think we all want things to be equal. We all want things to be better than or the same as they've been in the past, but that's not the world that we're in right now, right? The world that we're in right now is that everybody is taking a little bit of a knee on funding. And if we have an opportunity to expand the pie, especially because of the unique times that we're in for all of our arts organizations, I think that is to the overarching benefit of the creative and the artistic community of the city of Dallas. I understand that there are some organizations who will receive difference in funding, and I understand all that. And I think that we need to figure out a way to put more art into the world. And this is not a commentary on people's feeling like they do or don't want, more art in the world. I'm just saying that we need to put more of it into the world. And if the ability to put more art in more disciplines in more ways into the world means that we have to think differently for this year, for the next 2 years, for the next 4 years, then I think that is worth it, because we give access to the arts to not even the organizations, to the people that those organizations serve that may not otherwise have access to the arts, if we don't. And so I am an advocate first for Orange, but if not Orange, I'm an advocate for anything that gets those three and as many arts organizations as makes sense, into it. I understand the potential exacerbation of the challenge that we've already faced, heard. But when we made those decisions, we were not staring down a funding crisis like we are right now for so many of our organizations. We made those decisions during a time when things were a lot brighter and a lot rosier than they are right now. And everybody is feeling that. And so if everybody is feeling that, we need to adjust and adapt to the times that we're in, not hold to the times that we made these decisions during.
Thank you, Commissioner Daniel. Commissioner Haloma.
Thank you. I just have a question, for clarification. Do organizations already know of the potential percentage that they can get? Because that's going to affect my next question.
No, the guidelines that are printed have maximums as
Oh,
percentage of
perfect.
revenue, and then there's a code. So they know the absolute maximum they could receive. There is
Okay.
not an organization this year that I have suggested reach their maximum.
Perfect. Okay, so
Commissioner-
then,
Oh, sorry.
oh,
I'm sorry. I
that's
thought
good
you were
to-
finished. Go ahead.
No, it was good to know that answer, because my next comment would be, I agree with Commissioner Damani and everything that he said about the times that we're in. And I also agree with Commissioner Joe Trezilla about trying to be equal and trying to be fair and balanced. But this may not be the year to take that stance, but I would certainly entertain it once we kind of get a rhythm with this new federal administration. Because again, slide 12, fewer increases for current organization. I don't know if they can take that. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Halomo. Commissioner Hornbuckle.
I just wanted you to know my comment is based upon comments that were said. My hand was up a long time ago, and the comment about Dallas Black is important to me. Dallas Black, it will be technically a new organization, but it is not a new organization. I think we all know what happened with that organization. So they're not coming in as a new organization, nor should they be treated like a new organization. I want to also address your comments about the orange scenario, and are we interested in seeing if they could lower the amount of the entry level, or work those numbers a little differently with the organizations that are new coming in? I'll definitely entertain that.
Thank you,
But-
Commissioner Hornbuckle. And
Oh.
I agree with you. My opinion, for what it's worth, is that there are several organizations on here, but that are new but not new, and they are different from a brand new organization. They're organizations that we funded before. We have a history with funding them. So I completely agree with you. That's a different scenario. And anyone else who would like to weigh in on that, please do. Commissioner Trezilla.
So just for Commissioner Domini, there's only 2 organizations on this entire, looking at Orange, that is receiving less than what they did last year. That's in tier 1 and in tier 6. In tier 1, it's because they scored the lowest, and in tier 6, it's because they're getting the highest percentage of budget. Everybody else is getting at least what they got last year or more.
Thank you, Commissioner Truzella. Okay, I said that I was going to try to wrap this meeting up at 6. So Commissioner Hornbuckle and Commissioner Holomo, it's a small margin, but I still am not 100% in favor of orange, but I could be persuaded to work with the orange scenario if we look at making some adjustments to address my concern, which is that existing organizations who are not in line with percentages get similar bumps to what is in the purple scenario. I just don't want there to be, I don't want it to be kind of like what somebody said, that where it's, you're almost better off to take a year off and come back so that you can get a higher award, right? I could be persuaded to look at the orange scenario so that we could move forward, and then we could talk about what we would like Julia to do in terms of trying to address all of our concerns, maybe with nobody getting everything that they want, which is usually the way a compromise works. But my other two commissioners who are with me leaning towards purple, would you be comfortable if we kind of move toward the orange scenario, but ask for some adjustments to it to address those concerns that we have to support our existing organizations in an equal way to the new organizations? Commissioner Hornbuckle, thumbs up. Do you need to speak, or is that good? Okay. Commissioner Holomo.
I can go towards orange, but just understand that we are setting precedents for KERA, WRR, Young Women's Preparatory, other social service organizations to then come in and apply to be a COP organization. So I'm welcome to this.
Okay. So that at least gives Julia, I really do not want to send her back to create a completely new third scenario because of the amount of work and thought that goes into this. So I'd like to first ask Commissioner Hornbuckle and Commissioner Holomo, we get your point on the precedent, and this is going to require to get to address what are the things that are happening in purple that are not happening in orange that we want to try to make happen. And then what I need to hear from the orange people is, what are you willing to give on the orange, right? Like we can't kind of have a compromise and move forward to get those of us who favored purple a little bit more money for these existing organizations without giving something on the orange. So can we hear from you on that, so that Julia, you don't have to tell her what to do. All we have to tell Julia is what we're thinking. And somehow she is able to take that and convert it to a formula that 9 times out of 10 hits on what we're talking about. So you can ramble, you can say it however you want to, because she will figure that out. But is that helpful to you to have one scenario to work with?
Yes. I'm going to apologize deeply to the committee. Glenn is actually going to be listening to your thoughts on this last round, because daycare finds me if I am not there at 6 o'clock. So it is 4 blocks away. That said, I will come back and or listen to the recording if you're not done.
No, I was committed to stopping at 6. We might go 5 minutes over to give everybody their time. But you can also communicate with, you can communicate with
Please
Julia.
do feel very comfortable doing what the wonderful Commissioner Bodell did and send me an email with your thoughts, and I will interpret them if you don't get the chance to say them today. The other thing that, again, would be very helpful for me to listen to on the recording after is if you could look at the assumptions that I made that are part of both scenarios and make sure that you like them, because they're going to be baked in unless I hear otherwise. So thank you all so much, and I promise I'll listen to this recording.
And I apologize, I didn't get back to that. That's slide 1, right?
Thank you, Julia.
I don't know.
The assumptions Julia's referring to are in your packet on the slide. We'll try to figure out which slide it is and tell you. Okay. I'm going to ask some specific questions. First of all, there's been a lot of talk about Anita Martinez Ballet Folklorica. The recommended cut right now in the orange scenario is $10,000. We heard Commissioner Hornbuckle's comment, which I'll just go ahead and say I agree with. I am not comfortable completely defunding an organization in the current environment. Would anybody like to speak to whether this is a sufficient cut too much of a cut or you'd like to see more of a cut, because I don't think that is something that should be placed on Julia. I think the committee needs to give her guidance if we want that cut to be increased or decreased or left the same. So very quickly, I'm going to call on you in order and just comment on that one thing. Commissioner Truzella.
I don't think an organization should be cut completely. I agree with you, but I do think we need to be more equitable in the scoring, and treat those who score high. We need to reward them, and those who don't are going to feel some pain. Again, on the orange, there's only 2 organizations not receiving the exact same amount as they did. We're completely ignoring what happened in quality of life when the council members said, just because you got a certain amount one year doesn't mean you should get it the next year. It should be taken a look at every year. Otherwise, why do we have returning organizations go through the panel and go through the admin?
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to do it this way so we can get something faster. I'm going to ask 3 questions. I want you to raise your hand on the one that you support. And these are the 3 questions I'm going to ask. Do you support the Anita Martinez cut at 10,000? Do you want to see it as less, or do you want to see it as more? How many people think that that cut is appropriate and sufficient, and you just want to see that come back in the next scenario? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many would like to see a larger cut to Anita Martinez? 1. Okay. How many would like to see a smaller cut to Anita Martinez? Okay. We have one other organization that we have a cut to that is proposed, and I'll tell you why I am doing this. Cutting an organization is a significant thing, and that weight should not only be placed on the person who's preparing the spreadsheets.
Yeah, and I'll just as a point of clarification, I know it was talked about because they had such a high percent of revenue as they also have a significant amount of reduction in their proposed services for next year.
Big thought.
Big thought.
Big thought.
Yes.
Okay.
Just to add some extra context.
Okay. So the proposed cut in the orange scenario is $50,000, which I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, last year Big Thought was funded at 6.2%. And so this brings them down 0.4%. How many would like to see, how many would support a larger cut to Big Thought than is already proposed? 1. How many? Oh, 2. So we see 2. How many would support a smaller cut to Big Thought than we see? And how many would like to see the scenario come back with the exact same cut? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Next question I want to ask is related to the new organizations. The 3 organizations that were in question, not all of them, but just the 3 that were the difference between the purple scenario and the orange scenario. Currently, in the orange scenario, the proposal is to bring them in at 8%, and that is somewhere it's $45,000 each. So that's $135,000 that is going to bringing in 3 more new organizations that we would bring in otherwise. How many people would support? And the purpose, the reason behind that for Julia is to begin doing what we've asked her to do. The price that's being paid for that is that they get leveled up before existing organizations get leveled up in other tiers. Everything's leveled up in this tier, but the other tiers don't get leveled up. How many would support an orange scenario that came back continuing to fund these 3 organizations, but funding them at something less than the 8% in order to free up some money to go into the purple? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many do not? Joe. It looks like everybody. Okay. I'm gonna say on behalf of myself, but particularly those of who supported the purple scenario, thank you, because if we're going to try to address what those of us who were supporting the purple want addressed, we have to find that money somewhere else if we're going to bring in those 3 organizations. Okay. I felt like those were 3 big points. Are there any other big points? I want to open the floor for everybody to be able to say briefly
No, I think
Okay.
that captures the largest differences between them.
Okay, now I feel like everybody's kind of had an opportunity to explain their thought process, so let's leave the thought process out of it. If you have some specific ideas about things Julia should do, for example, we've got another organization in here, and I'll make one. We've got another organization in here that scores below 80. I think we should consider whether or not anyone who scores below 80 gets some sort of reduction. That might be a way to find money for the ones who are scoring properly or who are continuing to score high. If you have any of those sorts of suggestions, let's go around the room because we need to give Julia something to work with to make this scenario work for us. And if it is something, and if you think of it after this meeting, you can certainly just send her an email. Okay, Tino, Commissioner Holomo, I'm going around the top of the screen. So Commissioner Holomo, anything you want to add?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Daniel, Commissioner Bodell, Commissioner Jackson, Commissioner Hornbuckle. Commissioner Small is already gone. Commissioner Nugent, while you're not a voting member of the committee, we value your comments. Is there anything that you would like to say? Oh, I left you out, Joe. I'll come back to you.
I don't have anything to say. I think.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Truzillo.
I just have two things that I want on record. If we're going to bring up Dallas Black Dance Theater 2.6% higher than what the suggested amount is, we need to do the same for Dallas Women's Chorus because they are returning. And then the other one, the biggest discrepancy that I still have is between Dallas Theater Center and Big Thought and the differences there. And so if she could take a look at that.
Okay. I'm going to add to that comment. One of the things I noticed sort of late in the game is both Big Thought and Dallas Theater Center, I think last year or maybe 2 years ago, but formerly were in tier 5. And they barely make it into tier 6. I think in the Theater Center's case, it's 60,000. And in the Big Thought's case, it's about 900,000. And so one of the things she might do is, I mean, she can't move them to tier 5 because they're in tier 6, but look at kind of how their percentages look if they're in tier 5 and what that rule would apply. And if we can come up with some rule that is fair that addresses that. I will tell you all that when we look at the guidelines this year, I'm thinking that maybe we look at that tier 6. That's a pretty broad from 10 million up. And so it's like 10 million to 40 million. And so you can see when organizations jump into it just barely, how it gets a little skewed. So I think that that's something we could look at. Okay. Thank you all. This is really important and very hard work. I want to thank everybody for being so involved and also for being so respectful of all the commissioners' opinions. We are all working towards the same thing, which is funding arts in this community. And while we have to do it in a legally resilient manner, we are all looking towards continuing to serve all segments of our community. Commissioner Jackson, did I fail to call on you?
No, ma'am. You did fine. I was just gonna say, my thought is, as we continue to look at this, and maybe this is kind of something you just said, but either way, we're doing really good work. We're going to be able to help people continue the arts. And that's really at the end of the day, that's the important thing. And I think that either scenario, we're doing that. And we're doing it also under very difficult circumstances. So we should be, I'm proud and happy for that. And this is just a matter of, trying to do our very best, but we're still doing good either way.
Thank you very much. Very well said. And Commissioner Truzillo, I said I'd come back to you and then I didn't. Did you have any, or did I come back to you? My brain is completely.
That's all right. One other thing that I just noticed, that if we're going to reduce Anita Martinez, $10,000, we need to take a look at the other ones that scored in the 70s to be.
We have that on the list already. Thank you. Yes, we do. Okay. Have I given everybody an opportunity to speak? Anybody want to say anything else? Again, thank you for the hard work. If you notice anything or think of it, please get it to Julia sooner rather than later. We currently are scheduled for the October 2nd meeting, but Commissioner Jackson was not a part of that conversation. So I'm going to speak with the staff here and be looking for an email asking you about dates. It is my goal, because we are voting.
Madam Chair, I'll just, since that was the actual date, the other dates are going to be harder because I only have that one client on that day. So it's one person to move versus next week or the week after, it's a whole,
Okay.
list of people.
Well, thank you.
So
And I realize you moved that because we were talking about October 9th, and I am sorry that happened. Thank you for being willing to do that. I think it's very important that every member of this committee be present when we vote. So I would like it to be a date that we can all be there. And so it seems like we can all be there on October the 2nd. Commissioner Jackson, will you let us know if you're not able to reschedule that? And then we'll start.
This is what I want to ask you. As I'm planning to reach out to the client, is there a possibility that we would be done? Are you planning to, be finished by 6?
I was
Or do
planning
we
to be
know?
finished by 6 today, so I will say yes. And I think with the work that we've done today, I think that is reasonable. We don't have anything else that's large on the agenda. But I think all of this is really important because I think we're going to have more questions from the commission at large this year than we typically have.
Yeah.
Thank you to those of you who've been participating. So yes, we will plan on the vote being done by 6. How about that? And we will still have a
Okay,
quorum
so
if you
that
have
at
to
least
slip
gives
out.
me, right, so I can kind of just move her down as opposed to moving the date or something.
Perfect. Okay, all business before this committee being complete, I adjourn this meeting at 6:03 p.m., so not far off. Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone.
Thank you.
Good job, Chair.
Thank you,
Bye,
Julia,
guys. Good job, guys.
even though she's gone.
Thank you guys.